thing about relationship is that you never really know what's going on in them unless you're a part of them. We all have our own truth, and everything outside that truth is just a story. If you desire to have the real truth in your relationship and not just a story, then you deserve to listen to this new episode on Real Talk with Data, where you'll be able to know if he or she's the one for you before the yes I do. After waiting so hard, refusing to be pressured, you sure don't want to end up with just a story. But before I go on, I'd like to share with you some thoughts from some of our subscribers. Kunle said, after listening to the pressure on being single, that how about the people that are actually married because they are also pressured? And I couldn't agree more. So look out for this episode as I'll surely delve into it soon. Buki also wants to know how to get over someone you once had a relationship with and you want to actually stop catching feelings. You know what I mean. You don't want to have feelings anymore. We all are guilty sometimes. I read them because it means a lot to me that I have active listeners, and I'm happy to be your host once again today. Let's delve right into today's topic. When you meet someone for the first time, chances are that they'll be fun to date, right? They'll probably be charming, adventurous, kind, easy to talk to, depending on your own personality, and they could seem to fit perfectly. But when you look closely, you start to realize that probably they might just not be the one you will want to spend the rest of your life with. This is always trickier, and most times you don't even get to see those signs immediately. So while everyone has their own checklist, there are some traits and characteristics that we almost always agree on that makes a good man or a good woman. Now, let's talk about them. The first thing you should look out for is the person genuinely kind. Remember, I'm talking about the he or the she. So we're going to be using, both of them. So I'm saying, is the person genuinely kind? Kindness is actually underrated, in a relationship and in everything, but it shouldn't be. If you have built your relationship with God as your threefold cord, this person has to be kind. There's a place of character and there's a place of spirituality. Don't get them twisted. Number 2, is he not afraid to apologize? Is she not afraid to apologize? For the men, gender, it's always not so easy. A man who always circles back to apologize to you after you two have had a quarrel is a good sign, actually. A woman too, but let me talk about the man right now, because most times we're a function of where we grew up from. Some men are such that they don't even know how to apologize, really. Not because they don't want to apologize or because of where they grew from, but their actions actually show that they are genuinely sorry. Auntie, don't overflog the issue. Let it go, I beg. I'm not trying to make excuses for the man, don't get me wrong, but the reflection of what you see is most times the individual as a result of the background. So it would take a whole lot to bring such person up to your level, especially if the person grew up in such environment where apology is not the norm. So he could be a good guy, genuinely nice, hurt you and stuff like that, and his actions are actually showing that he's sorry. Take it. And for the lady too, the lady is also ready to apologize. It takes two to tango. It's not about just one person. It's a place where you actually have to die to self. That's why he says the father and the mother, you leave the father and the mother and you cling. Clinging means dying to self, which means you guys have to be selfless. Number 3, do you really truly love them for what they have inside? What they have inside is different from what they have outside. That is not to say that you cannot be attracted to the person, but attraction alone does not make a home. I say it all the time, 6 packs doesn't build a home. We should be about the content rather than the container. When the content is good, the container becomes beautiful somehow. You have a lovely container. Just let's imagine now you have a lovely container on the outside, but there's a rotten food inside. This would make proper sense to you, what I'm saying. Now you're so hungry and you're served with a rotten food in a beautiful container. Oh, sugar. It will take God factor in you as a human being not to throw away, or more like kick the container, because that's not what you want at that time. What you actually want is the food, because you're really, really hungry. So I'm talking about the things you need to note out before you say, yes, I do. Another thing is, do they have the fear of the Lord enough to seek God's counsel in all they do? Bible says, blessed is the man who fears the Lord, who greatly delights in his command. His children will be mighty in the land. The generation of the upright will be blessed. It will have no fear of bad news, because his heart is steadfast, trusting the Lord. Now, do you guys have the fear of God? Does the person you want to get married to, do they have the fear of the Lord? It's very important. If you know that somebody does not have the fear of the Lord, like run. Is he also a practicing believer? You see, there are issues that comes around with all these things. Now, I've given you the fourth one. I'm going to the fifth one. Is he or she, are they practicing believers? Issues and conflicts are part of discovering each other. So it's really not a big deal, right? Because you guys have come from different backgrounds. So, but the important thing is the common ground that you have is actually what makes the marriage accountable. Now, the last thing you want to be fighting about is your faith, whether or not to pray, your viewpoint on religion. Believe me, I've had that kind of relationship before, and it was really exhausting. The Bible says, do not be yoked together with an unbeliever, for what agreement is there between the temple of God and idols? It's in your Bible. I didn't say that, but what it is. You guys pursue, number 6, and love deeply. I talked about loving deeply, right? I said, do you genuinely love each other? Now, what are his strong principles? Is she somebody that likes to make excuses for her action? Is he somebody that finds excuses and reasons not to go out? You know, these days where we have hybrid, and then where we have remote work and all that, you really don't know who is working, but you know that this person is actually working because he's at home doing something. Not that he's not doing anything, he's just giving you excuses. You know, we know these people now. Don't make it look as if I'm the bad one here. What am I saying? Does he or she, do they have strong work principles? The Bible says, a little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest, and poverty will come upon, I don't want to say come upon the person like a thief, and scatter like an armed man. So what am I saying? You have to be careful. Really, really careful. Now, number 7, I think, yes, is that does he or she, do they have firm belief on the sacredness of fidelity? You see, when you guys are in a relationship, you have so many things to talk about. But for some reason, because you are catching feelings, uncle and auntie, ensure that feeling is the last thing you want to think about. Because marriage in itself is much more than that feeling that you were catching in the first place. Do they have firm belief on the sacredness of fidelity? A man with wisdom would understand that infidelity and craving for pleasure outside of the marriage only brings trouble. A woman as well. Because these days we have a lot of things happening. And then you find out that people are actually not worried anymore about infidelity. You know, it's 1-1. I mean, he has done it for me, I'm going to do it for the other person. What are the beliefs? What are their beliefs concerning this? Is it a no, or well, I don't know. If you do it to me, I'll do it to you. What are you guys talking about? When you guys understand that it is not the fear of each other that stops you from cheating, rather the fear of God, you continue to ask for grace to stay connected to your maker. The last thing I want to talk about is, do you have a lady that is not hot-tempered? A guy that is not hot-tempered? You know, when someone is hot-tempered, it can really spoil things. I used to know somebody that when she's very angry, back in the days, I think like about 16 years ago, when she's angry, she actually breaks things. Like, she comes back to apologize. But apology does not correct anything, because already what is done is done. So if you have that kind of person, are you sure that you want to say, yes, I do? Then Same thing with a guy too, because if a guy is hot-tempered, he can throw slaps and then bring roses at the end of the day. That's not going to work. Roses would not change the fact that something has happened. So there is peace in knowing that your spouse can control their temperament even when provoked. Someone who cannot control their feelings, emotions and anger enough to determine their action, they are ticking time bomb. I'm saying it again. They are ticking time bomb. The Bible says, Proverbs 14:17, a quick-tempered man acts foolishly. I've just given you example. Acts foolishly, and a man of wicked intention is hated. I'll give you one more bonus. Are they humble? Pride comes before destruction, and an arrogant spirit before a fall. Are they humble enough to admit when they're wrong? There is nothing worse than a petty argument blowing out of proportion just because someone refused to admit. We're not saying you should compete. We're asking you to just say, okay, I'm sorry and all that. I talked about being sorry earlier on, so I'm just saying, let the person be humble enough to say, okay, I'm sorry about what I did. Let's move on from there. How can we make each other better? When someone amazing walks into your life, but is not exactly the man of your dream, you can go to your father. Talk to him, your father, in prayers. Let him guide your decision. In all I have said, I don't want you to forget something, that no one is perfect, but grace makes the relationship better. As always, thank you for listening, and expect another episode next Tuesday. Kindly subscribe to my podcast and visit IG at Real Talk with Dada for more information on the podcast. I am here just minding my father's business. You know my name, Adedamola Emmanuel.